Every time I talk about forgotten Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I try to make it as specific as possible for me so that I don't have to sift through a ridiculous amount of cards. So in the past, I've talked about forgotten level 7 and level 8 synchros, or rank 3 and rank 4 exceed monsters, or hand traps, and those are all pretty specific things. Today, I wanted to do the least specific one that I've done so far, which is going to be the forgotten level 4 monsters. Now, there are a couple things that I need to tell you guys about before we get into this list. First of all, I'm only talking about main deck effect monsters. I'm not going to spread it out to extra deck monsters. I think that'd just be way too complicated, because then there's like a whole bunch of synchro monsters that I could include. But so it's only main deck effect monsters. And then also, and probably the most important thing, is that these are all cards that were competitive at one point or another, but then fell off the face of the earth, and have never been played again, or at least not in the last year or two. I do want to say that because there's so many level 4 monsters in the game, and I haven't looked it up, but I would be willing to guess that that is the most popular level of monster. I cannot possibly cover every single card that's been forgotten in this list. I'm only narrowing it down to the 5 that I thought of, and I think that it's a pretty good list, but obviously there's going to be other choices, so if you have other options that you thought about, please post them in the comment section below. Anyway, let's get into the list. Number 5 is Masked Chameleon. Now, I loved Masked Chameleon when it was first announced. I never ended up playing it anything, and I think the problem with Masked Chameleon is not that it necessarily has a bad effect. The effect to special summon a monster with 0 defense in the graveyard when it's normal summon is actually pretty good. Level 4 tuners are probably the best tuners in the game, maybe besides level 1 monsters, or level 1 tuners, I should say. So it has that going for it. It's also a reptile, so you can search it with King of the Pharaoh Imps. And the last time this card really saw play was during the original, I don't even know if you'd call it Pepe back then. It was the first set that the Four Mages were in, and Plushfire was in there. People played a very slim line of Pendulum monsters. You can play Masked Chameleon to make Cypher Lord Omega, shuffle back, or return your Perform Mage damage load to the graveyard. It was pretty good. So there's the problem with Masked Chameleon is not the effect. It's the restrictions on the effect. The first one is that you can only special summon monsters from the extra deck during the turn that you summon this guy. Now that worked quite well with Pendulum monsters, but in general it doesn't work quite well. And most importantly, you can't normal summon it if you control a level 5 or higher monster. Now that might not seem like a huge deal, but it is a huge deal for 2 reasons. First of all, it means if you have 2 Masked Chameleon, you can't even use them back to back if you go into a Synchro monster. The first one will get you to like level 8 Synchro monster. The next one you can't even summon until that first Synchro monster is off the board, and that's just really dumb. More importantly, though, this ruins the best combo with Masked Chameleon, or would-be best combo, and that would be you could Brilliant Fusion to send Perform Mage Trick Clown and Gemknight Garnet to the graveyard, and then summon the Trick Clown back, and then normal summon Masked Chameleon to bring back the Garnet. That would probably be the best combo with Masked Chameleon, but you can't do it because Gemknight Seraphinite is level 5, which is extremely disappointing. I like this card a lot. Probably won't see play for a while, although with Lynx being around, maybe it's a little more viable. But I think it pretty much had its time in the spotlight for that one specific set release, when people were just in the early stages of the Pendulum decks. Anyway, though, number 4 is Direct Wabo. Now, this card was extremely popular in 2012. Virtually every single early Dino Rabbit deck played it, and even a lot of the later ones, although many of them cut it for cards like Thunder King or Spirit Reaper. But Direct Wabo was incredibly important when Dino Rabbit was reigning supreme, specifically because it was so effective at running over Inzektor monsters and wind-up monsters. And there was a long period of time where the top 4 decks were Dino Rabbit, Inzektors, Windups, and Chaos Dragons. Now, Direct Wabo was pretty bad against Chaos Dragons. I mean, you could hit a couple things, but mainly this thing could run over virtually every monster in the Windup and Inzektor deck, and then you got a free another Direct Wabo from your deck, and then you could overlay those for an Evolzar monster like Lagia or Dolka. That was actually an incredibly powerful play. It's a +2 in card economy, and it was good. The problem with this card is that it's just too slow nowadays. There aren't even really a lot of monsters with low attack points that you can even run over. And if they do have low attack points, your opponent probably has protection for them with some sort of effect. But most importantly, if you draw 2 copies of these, or God forbid you draw 3 copies of these, you basically lose the game. I fiddled around with this card in the recent Dinosaur Structure deck when that first came out, but before we had Dragonic Diagram. It was kind of neat to summon it from the deck with Miscellaneousaurus and get a free kill, but overall this card is just not fast enough anymore. I will say though that it did have plenty of time as like a top contender, so it's not too sad to see it go, but it would be cool if more cards like this and Flamevell Firedog eventually became relevant again someday. Number 3 is Debris Dragon. Now, I feel like I always bring this card up on these lists because I just love Debris Dragon so much. It does so many things in just one small card. With this one card, you can basically make a level 5, level 6, or level 7 Synchro, or a rank 4 Exceed monster, or a 2 Material Link monster. That's a lot of different things, and there's so many cool cards it can bring back. Obviously, the most common one would be Dandelion, and that's what originally got Debris Dragon on the Forbidden Limited list, was the interaction with Dandelion. But also, there's some like weird ones you could do nowadays. The biggest one that I always have in the back of my head is the Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. I don't know if I would play a Debris Dragon Phantom Knight deck, but the option is still there. Debris Dragon probably suffers from a lot of the same things that Drac, Quaiba, and Masked Chameleon suffer from, and that is it's a normal summon based card. If its effect happen whenever it was summoned, I believe this card would actually be playable. There's a lot of dragon support that you could then mess around with, but as it stands now, Debris Dragon just isn't good enough. Possibly, maybe someday if we got like a deck that really wanted to summon a level 7 Synchro and played a whole bunch of 500 attack or lower monsters, you could possibly play Debris Dragon, and I'm still trying to find places where you can play this card, but I haven't really found it yet. But Debris Dragon did just come back to 3 on the recent Forbidden Limited list, so possibly someone will play it in something. Until then, though, it just remains in obscurity. Number 2 is Zombie Master. Now, once again, we have a card that was very competitive for a long time in a variety of strategies. When it first came out, it was pretty much competitive right out of the gate. However, even though we have some of the best zombie support of all time happening right now, I mean, you have Shiranui Solitary, you have Unizombie, you have Mizuki, you have Gozuki, you have Siphon Lord Omega, very few people, if any, are playing Zombie Master. The biggest problem with Zombie Master is the last line of its effect, which is this card must be face up on the field to activate and to resolve this effect. Not only does this mean that this loses to every single normal trap card pretty much, because the discarding is a cost, so if you discard a card and opponent hits with a breakthrough skill or a solemn strike or something like that, you lose the card that you discarded and the Zombie Master itself. Because it needs to be face up on the field to activate and resolve the effect, your opponent can actually hit this with a Ghost Ogre, and then you also don't get the special summon. That's just really, really bad, especially considering how popular Ghost Ogre has been. But pretty much any destruction card can double as a negation card for Zombie Master. It's just so susceptible to so many different things that it'll probably never be played again. And that's really disappointing because we are in a weird spot where zombies are the best they've ever been. They have so many good support cards. They have a lot going for them, and this card seems like a perfect match for a lot of zombie or Lightsworn zombie decks. And yet it's too inconsistent. A lot of the times you'll activate this card, it won't resolve, and then you'll have lost 2 cards to do nothing, and in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! You just can't afford to lose a turn like that. Coming in at number 1 is Reborn Tengu. Now, I know what you're saying. Reborn Tengu, that card was very good for a long time. It was. This was one of the best sneak peek promos, I would say. Right up there with like Dark Greffer. But Reborn Tengu, man, this card was so good when it was out. It was so easy to not only synchro climb with it aggressively, you could also use it as a defensive card to block a whole bunch of attack points, or a whole bunch of attack and damage and stuff like that. Man, Reborn Tengu, it was just so popular. It was the Reborn Tengu Plants was the best deck for a long time, and this card just dominated the competitive landscape. And then it went to 2 copies per deck because it was so good, and no one played it. Some people tried playing it in early forms of Fire Fist, but overall, people just ended up cutting it. The deck already had too many normal summons, and even when Reborn Tengu was at 3 when it originally came out, it wasn't a huge issue if you drew multiple copies. The game was a lot slower. You had the potential to come back. However, nowadays, if you draw 2 Reborn Tengus, it's just not good enough. the thing with modern Yu-Gi-Oh is that you can't just play cards that are good if you have other cards. You have to play cards that are good immediately. And that's really the downfall of Reborn Tengu here. One Reborn Tengu doesn't do anything, and even though I do believe that this card has a lot of cool combos with links, especially when we get the Wind link monster that just takes any two wind monsters, I believe this card has some potential, but the fact that it just doesn't do anything, and it does do stuff when you send it to the graveyard, obviously, but on its own, by itself, or even if you don't have the perfect hand, Reborn Tengu is just an accident waiting to happen. If you draw 2, if you draw 3, you lose the game right away, just like with Wabo. And while the payoff is a little better than Wabo because it's faster, you can use it on your first turn if you win the die roll, it's just not, it doesn't do enough, and that's really sad. Out of all the cards on this list, it's probably had the most competitive success, and yet of all the cards on this list here, I would say it's probably the least useful in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Normal summons that require you to have other cards to truly combo out are just not impactful enough on the game anymore, which is pretty sad considering that Reborn Tengu at one time was one of the most feared cards in competition. Anyway, though, that'll wrap up my list of the top 5 most forgotten level 4 Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters. That's a pretty long title. Like I said at the beginning of the video, and that I want to put as a warning, I couldn't possibly cover all the level 4 monsters that are forgotten. There are plenty of other level 4 monsters that were very good at their own time, and just couldn't make the list. And I didn't want to make it too long. We don't need like a top 30 level 4 monsters that are forgotten, but I think I narrowed it down to a pretty good top 5. Although, if you disagree with me, or if you want to add some more choices to the list, feel free to put them in the comment section below. Anyway, though, I will see you guys later. Bye.